Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. It's Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. It's your number one tennis betting podcast and YouTube show brought to you in association with Bet Rivers. It's me, your host, Nigel Seeley, still in Dubai. If you followed the Premier League shows or seen the action on the WTA show, you would know my problems out here trying to fly back to the UK or fly back to anywhere out of a war zone. But the one thing that's kept me happy and the one thing that's given me a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of money to spend over here on flights and my accommodation is the fact that we had a winner last week with Luciano Tarderi in Santiago, thanks to Sean Calvert. So thanks, Sean. How are you, man? You asked me what you could do to help me, and a little winner there got me my dinner for the night.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? I can't, unfortunately. I wish I could do more. Not sure I can, unfortunately. But it was it's nice to get outright back-to-back winners, isn't it? We obviously had the winner the week before with Sebi Corda over in Delray Beach. So nice to hit a bit of outright form. I would love to make it 3 this week because I've got some massive prizes lined up here, and if we make it a hat trick, then you might be flying first class back. Yeah, you never know.
Well, I'll take anywhere. I'll just take any class, cattle class, for anything. I've all sent a message out to Mr. Medvedev and Rublev who got out of here to head to Indian Wells. I would have loved to have gone on there with them, but it's a weird state out here. I mean, I'm trying to get the best spirits, but today I'm feeling a bit flat, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird way to do the show, isn't it? It's strange anyway, because normally I'm at Indian Wells at this point on about 3 hours sleep and not really knowing what's going on. And now I'm at home and you're not at Indian Wells. You're in Dubai and you're in the middle of a massive situation. It's just a very strange. That's probably the weirdest premise for a show that we've ever done, I think.
Yeah. I mean, but anyway, let's move on. People are coming for the bets. That's why they come in. A little bit of information on the tennis this week.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, after that winner last week, we're just slightly behind now, minus 1.70 units. So we're on the road to recovery, looking good. And we've been a bit unlucky. Obviously, Rublev, how he lost that semi-final last week. But he must have known that the following day there was going to be a problem because he got out of it as quickly as possible, I suppose. But I wish I'd known then what he'd known. I would have gone on the Friday as well. But anyway, that's another day. It's Indian Wells this week, and obviously it's a big event. It's a 1,000 event. It's the 5th biggest tournament of the year. Really, really big tournament. All the big guns are in action. And before we go into the trends, and you're going to give me all the trends and information, your man has been there many times. You can tell you the $1 bus routes if you want the $1 bus routes. John is your man. Before we do that, let's have a look at the previous winners. 2025 shock final in 2025. Jack Draper won it for Holger Rune, got to the runner-up spot. Carlos Alcaraz won it in 2024 and in 23 and 23. And on both those occasions, he beat Daniel Medvedev. So the Russian did well, the repeat finalist there. 2022, Taylor Fritz won it, the last American to win the title, beat Rafael Nadal. Shock in 2021, that COVID year where Cam Norrie won it. 2019,
played later in the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, played. Dominic Thiem won it in 2019. John Martin Petro in 2018, and two fellas called Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic won it in 2017 and 2016. Now, you've been there many times before. You know all about the conditions. You know all about the trends. What have you dug out for us to find a winner here in Indian Wells?
I thought I knew the conditions. That I would flatter myself that I know the conditions in Indian Wells better than most, having been there most years, but the numbers that came out of qualifying last night, they've changed the balls this year for the first time in many, many years. They play with pen balls here normally. They've changed the Dunlop ATP Tour, which is they're trying to standardise the ball across the surfaces. They now play with Dunlop ATP balls. And the numbers that came out of qualifying last night they're either wrong or there's something very peculiar about what's happened there, because normally conditions in Indian Wells, it's a gritty surface, it's slow, it's high bouncing, the ball flies in the thin air during the day, a lot slower at night, deadly slow normally. And that's what I would have come on the show and said, because that's how it always is. I can't imagine they've relayed the courts again since they did them all last year. That wouldn't make any sense to change from the court that they had to a lake hold and then change it again the next year to something else. I can only imagine it's the Dunlop balls and perhaps a slight anomaly, but last night's qualies, excuse me, 82% holds and 74% first serve points won. That's very quick, particularly for a quali draw. I can't see how it's possible. I'm not sure if it's correct or not, because as I said, just changing the balls from Penn to Dunlop, I wouldn't have thought it would make a massive difference like that, because the court is slow, gritty, high bouncing. So I'm not entirely sure. I think we're gonna have to have a look at the main draw. That could just be an anomaly of one day, or perhaps the numbers are wrong. I don't know. Last year, it averaged 75.2% holds and 68.8% first serve points won, which is like a sort of medium to quick clay event. And that's what Indian Wells always is. The CPIs last year, Stadium Court, very slow, 29.3 on one day, 31 on another day. Doesn't get as much sun, Stadium 1 or Stadium 2. Stadium 2 was 32.7, slightly quicker. Now, Taylor Fritz has spoken about the balls. He said, the issue isn't the brand itself, it's the combination of Dunlop and a slow court. The advantage is huge for players who move better, because you can't hit winners and nobody makes mistakes. I'll ask to play during the day unless I'm facing someone bigger and slower than me. During the day, my serve and aggressive shots are rewarded. At night, if you move better from the baseline, it can help, but generally I prefer the day. And those are the conditions that it's always been at Indian Wells. So I'm a little bit flummoxed as to these numbers that have come in from overnight last night. Just going slightly further on the stats. In the last 9 editions, it's if you're an overs-unders better, you'd be wanting to go unders. 57% have gone under of the matches in the last 9 editions. Lots of straight sets wins, particularly in round 2. I think it's a 70-odd% of the matches finish in straight sets in round 2 over a very long period of time at Indian Wells. Underdog winners, it can vary wildly. Average is 32% of the last 50 over the last 15 editions. Round 1 being the best at 37%. Sometimes you have a great year, sometimes you have a poor year. It is a little bit all over the place. The underdog P&L is actually in profit in the last 10 editions. If you had $10 on each underdog, you'd be up $166 in the last 10 editions. Now, just moving on to the weather, it does change very quickly here. People that go tend to pack about 3 different outfits, because it goes from very sunny and hot. It can go to dark cloud, wind and rain very quickly. That the evenings tend to get the rain rather than the day. And of course, the 1 year I don't go there, it's guaranteed to be fabulous weather, and that's what it looks like. Getting up to 35 degrees at some point in this Indian Wells. Tomorrow, when they start, it's going to be 31, which is hotter than it's been the last 3 times I've been there. Thursday and Friday, it dips down to about 25°C, but later on, there are some 35°C days in the forecast. Now, as far as the trends are concerned, number 1 seeds only won the title once in the last 8 editions. 4 of the last 6 champions were priced between 33-1 and 100-1. And 14 of the last 16 finalists here were Europeans. The only exceptions being Taylor Fritz in 2022 and Del Potro, when I had him that year in 2018, were the exceptions. And the last unseeded player, I'll throw another one in, the last unseeded player to win the title here was back in the year 2000. It was Alex Corretja. Everybody else since then has been one of the seeds.
Some very interesting stats there. I'll tell you what, Sean, I'll swap the weather for the rain and cold in England. I'll tell you that.
It's actually all right in England.
It's not what it's cracked up to be. I promise you, it's not weather. You'd be safe for home in the cold. Let's have a look at the all-important draw. And as we said there, all the top players in the world are here this week. A few absentees, but the majority of them are there. They all get buys. The 32 players all get buys through to the second round. And tomorrow the action starts, and it's about who will play those seeded players. Now, if the draw goes to the rankings, this is how it looks out. The top half of the draw, Carlos Alcaraz will play in the quarterfinals. Alex Dimitrov, obviously there's some very dangerous opponents there. Darderi, Bublik, Rube, Vachereau, Norrie, but also Sebastian Korda, who's shown a bit of form as well. He's in that Q1. In Q2, it's Novak Djokovic, who will play Taylor Fritz, but there is dangerous opponents there. Draper, defending champion. Cerundolo, who's always dangerous in these kind of conditions. Medvedev, what is he going to be like? You know, if he arrives there from Dubai, we have no idea if he's going to be fit. I mean, it's going to be a long journey for him to get there. He's going to be incredible. Lehechka, Baez as well in Q2. Then we go down to the bottom half of the draw in Q3 and Q4. Q3, Musetti will play Zverev. There is Rublev in there, also travelling back. Felix Auger-Aliassime, Fils, Tiafoe, Caboli. So there's the bottom half of the draw. And in Q4, Ben Shelton will play Lerner Tien in a mouth-watering last 32 clash. But also in there is Menchik, obviously a big serving. Got Miami to defend some big points in, so that might be his priority. Tommy Paul for the Americans, and also world number 2, Yannick Sinner. Looking at the draw, breaking it all down. You know, I don't really know where to start reading the draw, Sean. I mean, I'm not quite sure, but let's have a look at some odds with Bet Rivers before we break down the draw. Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner dominate the betting as we would expect. Carlos Alcaraz is unbeaten in 2026, plus 150, the pair of them. Novak Djokovic is $11. Medvedev is 20. I mean, I wouldn't bet him at 20 to 1 after what he's gone through the last 6 days here. He was brilliant, though, last week.
Has he arrived at Indian Wells yet, do you know?
Yeah, 28 to 1, Alexander Zverev, 28 to 1, Ben Shelton, 33 to 1, Alex Dimitrov, 33 to 1, Taylor Fritz, 40 to 1, Felix Auger-Aliassime, defending champion, Jack Draper, 66 to 1, Bublik, 80, Massetti, 80, Korda, 80, Tommy Paul, 80, and then 100 to 1, the outsiders after those players. Draw bias, I don't know where to start, really. I don't think there's really much in the top half or the bottom half, but what do you think?
I think if you're looking at a player for here, that we should mention that I don't know whether there are some players that are stuck in Dubai. I don't know whether they've actually arrived at the tournament yet. Those are catching off Medvedev, Rublev, and Grigor. I don't know if they've actually arrived on site yet. I'm not sure. I haven't heard the latest news on that. So those are 4 that
the last thing I heard that Rublev and Medvedev went to Oman and got a private jet to Istanbul, and then they went from Istanbul to back to Indian Wells. I had a message from someone. When I put my Twitter message up about my state of affairs, some random person just messaged me and said they can get me on a private jet for 10,000 from Oman if they want to go. So, I mean, just some random. You have to transfer it to this PayPal account. 10,000. Yeah, I'll do that, mate. No problem. Some random. I know.
That doesn't sound sus, does it?
Unbelievable. But anyway.
So we don't. I mean, we're assuming that they're there. I mean, let's assume that they're there. There's a lot of assumptions we've got to make about this draw because I have been really flummoxed by these numbers that have come out of qualies. If those numbers are accurate, it changes everything really. I don't see how they can be. I'm just going to have to do it on the assumption of what Indian Wells normally is. I can't imagine they would just have changed it at the drop of a hat to a totally different tournament. I mean, generally speaking, you want a good returner here is what you're looking for. All of the last 6 finalists are in the top 15 of the ATP's best returners list right now. It was the same final 2 years running, Alcaraz, Medvedev, so it's only 4 players, but they're all in the top 15 of the best returners list right now. I always feel like in these conditions, you have to return well. It's something that all the Indian Wells winners have done pretty much. Just breaking down the draw, Q1 looks very good for Carlos Alcaraz to me. His opening match might well be the trickiest one that he has. It'll be either Atmane or Dimitrov, whoever that is. It might be an interesting test. But just looking down the draw here, Rinderknecht, Vachereau, Casper Ruud does not like conditions here. That might change this year, of course, but he's never been a fan of the conditions here. Neither is Alexander Bublik, who's moaned consistently throughout his career about how slow it is here. He's coming off an epic, run in the South American swing, and then you're into sort of Cam Norrie and Alex de Minaur. It's very hard to make a case for any of those people beating Carlos Alcaraz. It does look a very good draw for him. If he could pick a draw, I think he'd probably choose that lot. That's nice for him. Moving on to Q2, much trickier proposition. I'm going to take one in this particular quarter. It's for me, it's the toughest side of the draw just because it's Alcaraz's side. I think Sinner is opposable in some way. Alcaraz got such a great record here in such great form. It's hard to kind of go against him, but there are some massive prices around here. And I've got one in Q2, which is Francisco Cerundolo, 150 to 1. He's not even on your graphic there. He's on the next page, I think. 150 to 1, I think, is a very nice price. He won Buenos Aires, obviously, just now in the golden swing. That was his goal for South America. Bit tanky after that, which you wouldn't be at all surprised with. He's won his home tournament in his hometown. He's kind of made a bit of an effort in Rio and a bit of an effort in Santiago, but nothing much. Made the quarterfinals here last year, did Cerundolo, ended up losing to Alcaraz. Fits the bill as a good returner. It's always clay-like conditions here, unless I say that it's vastly different, which, remains to be seen. So the conditions should suit him. He's in good form. He's in great spirits. I think that's a big price. The others in this section are opposable, really. Djokovic has got a very poor record here in recent times. Just looking back at my list here, Djokovic has lost 5 of his last 7 matches here. He's only won 1 match at this tournament since 2019. He lost to Van der Zandschulp, I think, here last time he played here. Draper, you wouldn't have thought, he's the defending champion, you wouldn't have thought he's quite ready to go all the way yet. He's only played, 2 or 3 matches since the US Open last year. Lehechka and Humbert, you would think it was too slow here, again, unless it's changed. Taylor Fritz does have a very good record here, but he does have ongoing knee issues, and some days he's fine, some days he's not fine. That a lot of people have been telling him or sort of begging him or advising him not to play at the minute because he has got that tendonitis in his knees, but he's carrying on playing. It's a negative. Medvedev, I don't even know if he's arrived yet. You're saying he's taken that route through Istanbul. Maybe he has arrived, but it's not ideal preparation, for all the jet lag, and he's got to play. That's difficult. He's never met Cerundolo, actually. Medvedev and Cerundolo have never met. That might be an interesting matchup if that happens. But I'm taking a quarter of a point on Cerundolo in that quarter, 150-1. Now, I think Q3 is the place to be. I think it looks a real opportunity for somebody who does Q3 because Alexander Zverev has got a very poor record here. If you take Alexander Zverev out of that draw, he's never played well here. You take his name out, and it's really, really open that Q3. And I like 2 players here. Unfortunately, they're going to have to go through each other. Only one of them's going to survive. But it's Musetti at 80-1 and Artur Fils at 100-1. Again, quarter of a point each way. They met here last year. I think I had Musetti here last year as well, actually. But they did meet here at this particular tournament. Fils edged it in a third set. I think it was 6-3 in the third. I think whoever wins that match, assuming they meet, has got a very strong chance of making the semi-finals. Musetti should be suited by the conditions here. I've always thought that he would be. He hasn't really shown it yet, but I definitely think he will at some point. Hopefully it's this year. He was playing great at the Australian Open, beating Djokovic 2-0 convincingly, got injured, his calf went. Now this is his first tournament back, but he's had a lot of time to prepare. He's been hitting on these courts. There was videos of him on Saturday hitting on these courts, so he's been here a long time. He should be very well prepared. Artur Fils very, very nearly made, you probably remember, very nearly made the semis a year ago. Lost in a final set tiebreak in the quarterfinals to Medvedev. Now, the way he plays with quite a lot of spin, I think it will suit conditions here. The fitness is a little bit of a worry for both of those guys, but I think Q3 is so open, and I'm not at all sold on Zverev. So I think if you're taking an interest in them, Musetti and Fils are the ones. You could also make a case for Rublev and maybe Felix, but I don't particularly fancy those 2 in these conditions. Gaboli's played an awful lot of tennis, as has Tiafoe.
Felix played a lot of tennis, Sean. And
Felix, and he's not the same.
It seems ages ago that I was watching him in over here in last week, but I didn't think he played very well. His serving was awful. He was very fortunate against Petri Perigard. He got injured and then he got lucky. Didn't play at all well against Medvedev. I think he looked absolutely shattered. I think he's opposable in that section. Definitely. He
seems to be a player that is indoor only, really, Felix. I know he has his moments outside as well, but he tends to be a guy who's so much better and so much more comfortable indoors than outdoors. And these conditions are tricky. Let me just have a look at Felix's record here. I think it's that great. 7 wins, 7 losses, 1 quarterfinal. Not particularly great. Rublev, I would fancy perhaps a little bit more here. 9 wins, 7 losses, semi-final in 2022, but he's lost 3 of his last 4 matches here. I remember he lost to, I think I had him last year, he lost to Arnaldi in the first round. I think that potentially that was the year before. I can't remember, but that certainly did happen. So some big price, couple of runners there. Q4, obviously very interesting. He's got Yannick Sinner in there. He hasn't got a great record here, Sinner either. Can't be fully confident right now after recent performances. Sinner's record here is all right for most players. It would be pretty good. 11 wins, 3 losses, a couple of semi-finals, but no final yet to speak of. And as I say, he's coming off a a couple of confidence-denting losses to Djokovic and Menchik. The conditions at night probably don't suit him here. Very, very slow. And the day is set to feature some very, very hot days. I'm pretty sure he'll probably play most of his matches at night, but they might stick him on during the day. I'm not entirely sure. But I think he's worth opposing with one in this section. And the one for me at a massive price is Davidovich Fokina at 150 to 1.
Oh, you're not going there again,
I am. 150 to 1.
You learned your lesson from last week. Come on, Sean.
Last week there could have been an excuse last week because there was a lot of stuff going on, wasn't there, in Acapulco? There's some very strange defeats, like Yibing Wu beating Rude on a slow, hard court. You would never fancy that. There's a few other results. Diminor losing to Kipson. I think there was a few players there that just did not want to hang about in Mexico. There's other reasons anyway for Davidovich. I don't mind having a quarter of a point at 150 to 1. The main reason is I think the conditions suit him, and he's got a very good record against the guys around him. He's 3 wins and 0 losses against Ben Shelton. He's 1-0 versus Tien, a very convincing one as well. I think it was 6-2, 6-2 or something like that. He's won his last 4 against Mensik, has Davidovich. And those 3 that I just mentioned, Shelton, Tien and Mensik, I would prefer all of those in Miami. I don't really fancy them here, and Shelton probably, maybe, but I would prefer him in the conditions in Miami. Davidovich has only actually played Sinner once, and he had 3 match. This is a very Davidovich sentence. He had 3 match points for a straight sets win over Sinner in Dubai. Ended up losing in 3 sets, which is kind of typical for Davidovich Fokina. But yeah, I think if you are going against the grain, there has been some massive price winners here and massive price runners up here over the years. I think it's worth having a little investment on the 4 guys that I mentioned. 3 in this Sinners half, because I think that's the one to attack. But a little one in Alcaraz's half as well.
Yeah, it'll be something when Davidovich Fokina wins his first ATP Tour event before I get home from Dubai. That'll be pretty special.
He's just got to get to the final. That's enough for me. That'll be fine. But so Tommy Paul's the other one. Tommy Paul's the one that I think potentially could do something in Q4, but he would probably be more of a guy that I would hope that beats Sinner, knocks Sinner out, and then opens the door for one of our guys. So yeah.
Now we do have 5 matches that Sean wants to talk about after those massive prices there to win the tournament. And let's have a look at those matches. Let's go straight into it. We don't know the order of players yet, but we do know that Bet Rivers will be available on the app, and you'll be able to live stream these matches. If you haven't watched it on your television screen, you'll be able to live stream them on the Bet Rivers app. You also got to remember that the tournament does start tomorrow, but it's only the matches involving these lesser players with a right to play a seeded player. So the outright markets might still be there in a little bit of time, but it's best to get on because there's some big prices there you want to get involved in. We don't know the order of play yet, but we do know the matches. It's Grigor Dimitrov against Terence Atmane, -192 for Grigor Dimitrov, +142 for Atmane. The spread here is 2.5, total 22.5. Your usual amount of markets available on the app, live streaming as well. Unfortunately, I don't know the head-to-head because we haven't got any internet here. The internet keeps going down in the evening for obvious reasons, and I have to use my mobile, so I don't know the headset here. So you have to tell me, Sean, I'm afraid.
I can tell you. Well, they played last week, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
I just wonder what Dimitrov's got left here. And generally after all his injuries, he's 35. Another one for your birthday card list. He's 35 in.
I can't send him. I'm here tonight.
You've got a couple of months. Don't worry. It's not until May.
So. Well, how would you bet? I'll be back. I wouldn't be taking much minus money.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Okay. Atmane beat him very comfortably in pretty similar conditions in terms of a slow, bouncy hardcore over there in Acapulco. Obviously, it's more humid in Acapulco than it is versus the sort of drier heat here in Indian Wells. But it was a very convincing win, 115 to 85. Service points won and return points won totals in favour of Atmane. Dimitrov winning just 26% on second serve. And Dimitrov got there really early to prepare. He was talking about how early he'd got to Acapulco, and he was prepared and ready, and he got absolutely wiped away by Atmane. And since coming back from that bad pectoral injury that he had at Wimbledon, he's only won twice. Service points won and return points won, a total of 96. You know, it's a very, very low level. He's working with David Nalbandian now. People will probably be aware. But from what he said, it doesn't seem like he's able to train well enough to be back at his old level just yet. Whether he ever gets there, I don't know. You know, he's not a young guy anymore. He's had a lot of injuries. Atmane is, of course, very, very hit and miss, as we all know. But when he finds a good groove, he is hard to stop. He's a real confidence player, real streaky player. Made the quarterfinals in Acapulco and then was sick in the loss that he had to Kekmanovic. I think he got a point penalty on match point for a time delay because he was throwing up, and it was the last point of the match, and that's how he lost in the end. But he was well beaten by Kekmanovic, but he clearly wasn't well on that day, as a lot of players often aren't in Acapulco with the heat and humidity. So, yeah, I think he's got a good chance of repeating that win over Dimitrov. Dimitrov's going to need a massive, massive improvement, which he's capable of, but I couldn't bet him at minus 192, just the way he's playing at the minute. So Atman money line for me. We'll take 3/4 of a point on that one, I think.
3/4 of a point. Atman on the money line at plus 142. Our next match is Gabriel Diallo up against Matteo Bellucci. Diallo, the big serving Canadian, minus 161. Bellucci plus 120. Spread here is 1.5 total, also 22.5. Set betting available and a whole host of markets on the Bet Rivers app, which will be updated throughout the day. Probably about 55 different markets on this match by the time it starts. Again, we do not know the order of play, but we do know that Diallo is a heavy favourite, but the conditions might not suit the Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, it's another guy who's not in no sort of form at all, Diallo. And another lefty that did find his form in Acapulco after a long, poor, sort of dry spell is Mattia Bellucci. Bellucci beat Hijikata and then beat the aforementioned Davidovich Fokina for his first main level wins since Shanghai last October. Mattia Bellucci. Now he takes on a player in Diallo that he has beaten on 3 occasions, on grass as well, actually, on hard courts and grass. The one occasion that Diallo did beat Bellucci was in Acapulco Qualies 2025, when Bellucci might well have known that he was in the main draw anyway because his fellow Italian Musetti withdrew. And the fact that he lost 6-1, 6-love suggests to me that he was fully aware that he was going to get in back into the main draw as a lucky loser. He didn't want to waste any energy in the heat and humidity of Acapulco by putting an effort in it when he didn't need to. So that's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but it does seem quite likely. Even if you include that match in the head-to-head, the 4-match career series, it still favours Bellucci, even though he got 6-1, 6-love beating in that match. It still favours Bellucci 104-96 across the course of all 4 of their meetings. Bellucci, quite strangely, was something you wouldn't perhaps expect, winning more first-serve points than Diallo in this matchup. 72% first-serve points won Bellucci to 67% Diallo. You wouldn't expect that, particularly with one of the meetings being on grass. And Bellucci's won 40% of return points against Diallo. Diallo's done all right on return as well, 35.7%, but it's apparent that the Diallo serve hasn't bothered Bellucci that much, apart from that one match, obviously. 40% of return points is pretty big against a server like Diallo. And Diallo's coming in here very much on a downer, really struggling for form. I'm assuming he's struggling for fitness. He's lost 6 of his 8 matches in 2026. Service points won and return points won total of 95 this year. He's only broken serve 9% of the time this season. And his only wins at any level in 2026 came against the world number 292 in Davis Cup and a win over Jesper de Jong, who himself has only won 1 match since last October. So a very much out of form de Jong and a very low ranked player in Davis Cup. Diallo's only wins so far this season. And you wouldn't have thought, assuming that conditions are normal Indian Wells conditions, you wouldn't have thought that it would suit him that much. I don't think it suits Bellucci either, to be completely honest, but I wouldn't fancy Diallo as favourite here, minus 161. So Bellucci plus 120 on the money line. 0.75 points again.
Yep, 0.75 points on Matteo Bellucci, our second match of the first round, and obviously I think it's our 5th or 6th bet on the show so far. Must have been the most bets we've ever had on the previous show. Next match, Matteo Berrettini up against Adrian Mannarino. Berrettini, heavy favourite, minus 227. Wasn't convinced about him last week. Mannarino, obviously, the veteran of the tour, plus 165. Spread here is 2.5. Also, total 22.5. You might want to look at totals whenever Matteo Berrettini plays. Obviously, but it's travelling for him to come from, was in Acapulco, Santiago, wasn't he? Where was
Santiago, yeah.
Santiago. Mannarino here. Look a bit of a fair price here at plus 165.
Yeah, minus 227 on Berrettini when you think about this matchup is horrible odds, really. I mean, even if it's quicker this year, as it could be, that would suit Mannarino as well, because Indian Wells conditions don't really suit Adrian Mannarino at all. He's got a surprisingly good record, actually. Good. He's got a surprisingly decent record at Indian Wells, Mannarino, despite the fact that it's slow, high bouncing, which is the opposite of ideal for Mannarino. If we look at their Indian Wells records, I don't think it's ideal for Berrettini either, actually. Mannarino has got a 50% win rate here in the main draw and a service points won and return points won total of 100. That's pretty respectable, considering he doesn't like the conditions or they don't really suit him. Berrettini, just a 40% win rate here and a very similar total, 99.8. It's a little tiny advantage for Mannarino, but certainly no advantage for Berrettini, that's for sure. But it's the career series that tips the balance for me here in favour of Mannarino. It's overwhelming. They're only a couple of matches, but they've played twice. Mannarino's won every set, 5-0. Both were played in quicker conditions than you are likely to get here. Service points won and return points won totals 113-87 in favour of Mannarino. Mannarino has never been broken in 5 sets. He's not the biggest of servers. Not been broken ever by Berrettini. Going further, Berrettini's only actually won 18.6% of return points, and he's created 1 breakpoint chance in 27 Mannarino service games. It's quite astonishing numbers. Mannarino winning 71.4% on second serve. Berrettini winning 55% on second serve. But massively overwhelming numbers, and you can kind of see why Mannarino he's very awkward. A lot of guys don't like playing him. He's got such a unique style. He kind of massages the ball around the court. Very low, very flat hitter. Puts the ball where Berrettini doesn't want it, which is basically on his backhand. Mannarino did struggle a bit in Acapulco, but no surprise that he lost. We actually bet against him there, didn't we? I think it was Shimabukuro that beat him there. No surprise to me that Mannarino lost there because he put a massive effort in Montpellier and then flew out to Dallas very short notice and almost beat Ben Shelton there. So he played well on the indoor hard, went to Acapulco. No shock he had a poor result there. That doesn't worry me. He's certainly had time to recover since then, and it's hard to ignore this matchup, really. The head-to-head doesn't always mean that much, but I think it does here. And Berrettini comes here having struggled on the golden swing. Even at altitude in Santiago, he looked, a shadow of his former self, really. So happy to take Mannarino here on the money line. We'll take a point on Mannarino at plus 165 for Bet Rivers.
Plus 165. Another outsider, Adrian Mannarino. Another bet for us. Busy on the bets. We would go for another outsider here, Emilio Nava, plus 133 against Nuno Borges, minus 179. 2.5 spread, 22.5 total. I suppose this one here is all about how you interpret the court conditions. If it's quick, I suppose Nava's got the advantage. If it's slow, it's Borges all the way.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Although strangely, Nava did beat Borges on clay. Strangely enough, but it was quite a long time ago. Well, I think it was their most recent head-to-head meeting. It was a few years ago, actually. And Nava was the one that beat Berrettini at altitude in Santiago last week. He'll fancy his chances here, having beaten Borges, as I said, on clay in the past. Long time ago, but he's still beating him on clay, which you wouldn't expect, really. And Borges is another one who's really struggling for form in 2026. Hasn't won any of his 5 matches since the Australian Open, and he's only won 1 set in the last 12 that he's played, Borges. Even the 2 wins at the Australian Open were suspicious. Well, not suspicious, but not great quality, because one of them was a retirement from Felix Auger-Aliassime, and the other one was against Jordan Thompson, who hasn't actually played since he lost to Borges in Melbourne. So he basically played 2 injured players at the Australian Open, and since then he hasn't won a match at all. So poor form currently for Borges. If you look at the last 10 matches each on this surface, outdoor hard at main level, slight advantage to Nava. Service points won and return points won, total of 99. Borges 98. The stats for Davis Cup aren't in my database, and Borges did lose both of his Davis Cup matches in straight sets to Zhang and Wu when he played there. So his numbers should actually be worse than the ones I just quoted, but I haven't got them. So you would expect his numbers to come down slightly. The head-to-head is very close. A couple of matches a long time ago, tiny edge to Borges, 101 to 99, which is very slender. Probably not that relevant because it was such a long time ago. And Borges has done nothing really at Indian Wells at all. He's lost 3 of his 4 matches at this particular tournament. Borges, Nava's won 2 of his 4. So it just points to Borges being a bit skinny here, minus 179. Nava is very hit and miss, so it's just going to be half a point for me. But I think there is a little bit of value in Nava at plus 133 here.
Another outsider. Lots of action, and will we cap it with our final match? We know that Sean is keen on Francisco Cerundolo at 150 to 1 to win the tournament. Is he going to be with his brother, Juan Manuel Cerundolo, at plus 225? He's up against Botic fan the Zandschulp, minus 333. I do like Botic. I like him as an underdog, but I do not like Botic as a minus 333 favourite against anybody. A spread here is high. It's 3.5. Total's low, 21.5. I like the over, which is minus 120. Set bet in there. Game set spreads as well. And Botic is even minus 116 to win 2 sets to love. Not having that. Are we capping? Do we get with the Cerundolo brothers?
I think we have to, yeah. I think conditions, of all the matches that I've talked about so far, I think this is the one where the conditions will be very important. If it's the same as in previous years, i.e. slow, high bouncing, kind of gritty, you would fancy Cerundolo to make this a tough ask for Van der Zandschulp. You know, Cerundolo is more known as a clay player, but he's certainly been improving on the quicker surfaces recently. Plays kind of a reactive brand of tennis, really. Doesn't miss much. He's been an archetypal clay grinder, if you like, left-handed, of course, but an archetypal clay grinder over the years. He has evolved a little bit lately, Cerundolo. A little bit more weight to his shots, slightly better shot selection, little better in terms of just picking when to stick and when to twist, if you like. And Van der Zandschulp will have to play a very clean match in tricky conditions to win this at minus 333 or straight sets. I think he's going to have to play really, really well. The head-to-head is all on clay. They played 3 times. Cerundolo's won them all, if I can actually find it. Probably don't need to because I can remember it. Here it is. But yeah, it's 3-0 to Cerundolo, all on clay. Service points won and return points won, totals across those 3 meetings, 102 to 98 in favour of Cerundolo. And the key takeaway for me, looking deeper into those stats, is that Van der Zandschulp's only won 35% of his second serve points in those 3 matches versus 59% for Cerundolo. That's the key takeaway. You know, I know it's on clay. I know some of them were a little while ago, like 4 years ago or whatever, but it's not been a handy matchup for Van der Zandschulp. And Van der Zandschulp was favourite for the 2 most recent meetings. Both of them were on clay. Van der Zandschulp was favourite and lost both of them. You know, with Van der Zandschulp, he's got a typically in and out record at Indian Wells. Beat Djokovic here, but overall just a 44% win rate and a service points won and return points won, total of 98.6. You never really know what you're going to get with Van der Zandschulp. Went to Rotterdam, didn't he? His home tournament, very nearly beat Dimitrov in the quarterfinals. You'd think, yeah, he'll kick on from that. That was a great performance from him. Goes out to Dubai, loses in the first round of qualies to Pablo Carreno Busta. So you really don't know what you're going to get from Van der Zandschulp. I like the plus 3.5 here. The game spread plus 104. But it's just going to be half a point because I am worried about these stats that have come through. If I was certain that this was same in Indian Wells, then I'd probably go a bit bigger. But just half a point on Cerundolo, plus 3.5 games, plus 104.
That is our final bet of what is a bumper day of action for tomorrow here in Indian Wells. We have the outright markets. We have the matches there. Some really, really big prices on the outright market. Some good, really value plays there on the matches as well. Before I let you go, Sean, just give us a bit of a recap. I was going to take 5 minutes. Give us a recap of the bets.
I think I can rip through it pretty quickly. The one I just talked about, but Juan Manuel Cerundolo, plus 3.5 games to beat Van der Zandschulp, plus 104. That's half a point. Half a point also won Emilio Nava on the money line against Borges, plus 133. We bet Rivers. 1 point on Adrian Mannarino, plus 165 on the money line to beat Berrettini. 3/4 of a point on Bellucci. Again, money line plus 120 against Diallo. Atmane also 3/4 of a point, money line plus 142 against Grigor Dimitrov, and 4 massive prices on the outrights, all 1/4 of a point each way. Francisco Cerundolo 150 to 1, Lorenzo Massetti 80 to 1, Arto Feast 100 to 1, and your mate Alejandro Davidovich Fokina 150 to 1.
How's he going to fare without his physio there in his corner? Myself,
I don't know. That's the question.
I think that's where his career's gone wrong. Where he hasn't won the tour, he hasn't got me as his physio.
It could be.
Anyway, that has been it on a very, very strange betting weekly game bet match. There is our bet. Myself and Sean will be back later on in the week with an extra show, probably a couple more while we can. Hopefully, I can't record one later in the week. Hopefully, I'll be in transit coming back, but you never know. If you want to follow anything we do, follow us at our socials at Because We Win. There's stuff there throughout the week. Also, Betting Weekly Betting Weekly WTA with Tim Dennis. We looked at the WTA show. We had some picks on there, big price pick as well on the outright market on the women's. That is available now on the website. If you subscribe, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified of every bit of content that drops. Betting Weekly Live every day, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Betting Weekly Live PM every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time as well. And it's a busy weekend, busy week of Premier League action as well. And we've got that covered for Wednesday and Thursday's matches on Betting Weekly Premier League with myself and Jack Wright, who had finally, after a bad season, hit a bit of form with a couple of winners in the last couple of weeks. Channel's doing well. Everyone's in good form. Winners galore. Hopefully we continue that trend into tomorrow in Indian Wells. We'll be back later on in the week. Sean, thank you very much for your time, mate. Take care.
Pleasure.
And we'll speak to you all again later. Take care.